person of few words. I'll keep this presentation as light as I possibly can. We're talking about insurance, so that's never very exciting. But just to give you a quick background, I've been in insurance since I was 22 years old, so it's probably like, I don't know, 100 years now. And I started off in benefits and then transitioned into commercial insurance. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm talking, is that I insure small businesses. And so my job is to really give you some insights so that you walk away from this and be able to apply it to your business. You know, just even if you took one good idea, I feel like my mission is accomplished. I'm a Connecticut person. I grew up in Cheshire. I live in Westport today. I'm married. I've got 2 kids, and the kids are in high school. My office is in Shelton. So I've been all over the state. I've had probably 8 or 9 offices now, from Stamford all the way up to Glastonbury. Very familiar with the state and what's going on in the business world. I'm going to share my screen now. Get to the presentation. Let me just open this up.
Alex, you're on mute.
Yep, can't hear you.
I don't know how I did that. I apologize. Thanks for chiming in. So I'll take you back. We're going to navigate through the commercial insurance space. It really has changed pretty drastically in a short time. I'm going to take you through some of those changes and how it impacts us as small business owners. But again, that's my information. And I'm now, as a result of COVID, a podcast host. I've shot 10 podcasts, and I interview small business owners and community leaders. So one dropped today. The CEO and executive director at Homes for the Brave, that just dropped today, so you can see all that stuff. So I interview a lot of nonprofit execs and business owners. So it's just another way to learn from businesses. It's not insurance related. It's just, what's happening in their businesses and how they can help and give information. All right. So the commercial insurance world has changed drastically in really in a relatively a short time period. Commercial insurance, as a small business owner, we used to have it really easy, actually, as business owners. We paid for insurance, including workers' comp, if somebody, an employee got hurt, or you had a client walk into your building and there was a slip and fall. Insurance was really, believe it or not, simple. And the costs were relatively flat with some, 3 to 5% increases. And now it's getting out of control. And the end of the story is it's unfortunately not going to get better for the foreseeable future. So I feel like the Grim Reaper when I do these presentations. So I'm just going to touch on these things. The first risk that's changed drastically is commercial auto. So why would a company need commercial auto? Well, let's say it's a landscaping company or something like that, and they need some vehicles. Well, what's happened is in the commercial auto space, claims have gone bananas to the point where it's unprofitable for a lot of the carriers. So the losses reached $4 billion in 2019. And then we hit COVID and things changed a little. But what happened during COVID was there were fewer accidents with fewer cars on the road, but more fatalities. So I never stopped driving to work. I come from Westport to Shelton every day, and I noticed the speed at which people drive and drove through COVID, and people would be passing me. I'd be going 75 and I'd be passed at 100 miles an hour. Well, there are a lot of fatalities statistically through COVID. That drives the cost up for everybody. The other factor is there are 2.6 million drivers, projected additional drivers on the road. That drives the cost up for everybody. The the big issue, well, the two other big issues with commercial auto is there are technological advancements that have really improved a lot of things, but a fender bender isn't a fender bender anymore. So when you slam into the back of a car because you were on your phone, that's typically what happened, or some other form of distracted driver, and I don't mean you, I mean that somebody does this. Um, well, when somebody hits the back of the fender, what's in the back of a fender of most cars now? Cameras, right? And so the cost of the fender is a lot of times totaling out the vehicle. So the cost of that fender is you don't just replace it anymore. You've got a whole camera system that's connected and so forth. So the cost of these accidents is increasing all of our insurance. So as good as technology is, there are some downfalls with it. So those are some of the issues with commercial auto. The final thing is distracted driving. So what would be, and I'd rather give a presentation where people could chime in, but I know on Zoom we've got mute buttons, but what would be an example of distracted driving? Obviously texting, that's the big one, but still applying makeup or looking in the mirror or lighting a cigarette, or anything, eating. Those are all distracted
People
driving.
shaving in the
What's
morning.
that?
I see people
Shaving?
shaving in the mornings.
I've seen it all. I've
Yeah.
seen it all. I mean, yep, you name it. But anything that, or a poodle on your lap, right? Anything that distracts you is a cause. And these things either get better or worse. They don't stay the same. And unfortunately, they're getting worse. And I think if the insurance industry decided to do something about it, and the government decided to do something about it, we'd have less fatalities and we'd have far fewer accidents. But the phone is the biggest issue, obviously, the handheld. So that is commercial auto. Any questions there? Business interruption. Okay. This is
Actually, Alex, I
Yep.
have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Is there a similar impact on the personal lines as far as the rates as well, or?
Great question. Yes, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's just it just so happens that, listen, just because somebody drives a vehicle for a business doesn't mean that they change their behaviors. And this is all, there are analytics involved and stats and unfortunately, somebody who drives a vehicle for a business is typically on their phone and doing distracted driving and so forth. So it's all a big challenge right now. But great question. Yep. And but moving on to business interruption, this was a big hot button for a lot of companies who called me a year ago and starting in March last year saying, okay, my business is suffering a loss because of the pandemic. Am I covered? Will my insurance company pay for me? Right? And that's called, so in normal situations, business interruption, and I've got the definition: in the event of a loss, business interruption provides coverage for income that the business would have normally received if it had been operating or, in a normal situation. But these are due to specific losses, i.e. like a fire or an earthquake. That's where the business interruption will kick in. It doesn't cover pandemics or disease. And so there are lots of lawyers trying to fight it and so forth, but we haven't seen any movement in terms of business interruption and COVID. And I really don't think we would, because if the insurance companies start paying out claims on business interruption, I can't, I don't, I think the insurance industry would go up in flames, and, or worse, or best case, our premiums would probably be, so astronomical that nobody would be able to afford insurance anymore. So that's business interruption. And again, I'm Grim Reaper. I wish I had better news. Cyber threats, for those of you who have been staying or watching the news, and if you can stomach the news anymore, but there was a major cyber threat just the other day, a ransomware attack. And what happens is bad people take your information, they seize your information, and they say to you, okay, well, Nancy, for $250,000, I will unlock your computer and now you can go back to business. And you say, well, I'm not going to pay that. And now you're out of business. So so ransomware, the most frightening thing of this to me is that the FBI will tell you just pay the claim because we can't do anything about it. And so, the attackers are in China and they're in Iraq and Afghanistan and Russia or right down the block, but they're almost impossible to track down. And that part one is the FBI will tell you to pay it. Part two is that the average ransomware claim right before COVID was about 15,000 per claim. And I'm talking like a small doctor's office, okay? Not a big, they're not all municipalities that are hacked, right? But it went from 15,000 to 250,000 in 2 years. So the average ransomware attack, the criminals are demanding 250 on average now. So they're getting smarter, and you have to do everything in your power as a small business owner to protect yourself up front. Okay. And then there is insurance for all that stuff. That's one of the things I do. But really, it's what you do up front to protect your business. And I advise people all the time, it's the little things. Like in Westport, we had 4 cars stolen last weekend. What was the commonality of all 4 stolen cars? Somebody left their keys and all their cars unlocked, right? So, they wouldn't have been stolen. Those cars absolutely wouldn't have been stolen, but we're making it easy for hackers and we're making it easy for criminals. So you got to do everything in your power to change your password. Don't keep it all the same. Don't leave these your systems up for grabs, because the cyber threats, everybody on this call runs a small business of some sort. You've been doing this for X amount of years. You put all of your time and energy into becoming successful, and these hackers can wipe you out in a nanosecond. They don't care about you emotionally. They don't view themselves as criminals. They're just taking your money, and they could care less about you. So that's what's happening in cyber, where there's a lot more than that. But anyway, that's what we're dealing with. And that stuff, just think about it. 10 years ago, this stuff didn't exist. So as a small business owner, this is very, very real. So you want to align yourself with a good IT specialist. There's no question. And it's certainly a good, insurance carrier or person like myself. Any questions on cyber? I could give a hour-long talk on cyber, but I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea. Workers' comp is impacted. Oh, this is I apologize in advance. This was a drastic example of the crew from Jackass. It's one of their jobs is wrestling the snake in a ball. I mean, it's the most dangerous thing you could possibly do, I would imagine. So a little humor in insurance, if you can't laugh, what's the point? So, but I apologize if that offends anybody up front. It's just that these guys wrestle on a snake. But workers' comp, there are lots of issues going on right now. But as you know, workers' comp covers somebody if they get hurt on the job, right? And what's happening is the rise in comorbidities is lengthening out the workers' comp claims and making them more expensive. So the healthier you are going into some type of illness or some type of injury, the quicker your body can typically, respond and get you back into work. But the increase in these comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, depression, substance abuse, anxiety have all increased the cost for workers' comp for all of us. And so all these things that I'm talking about are basically, I look at it this way. Insurance is like a tax. And the better we operate as a unit, as a company, as a country, the less the costs are going to be for everybody. The worse we operate and the less we take care of ourselves, the more the costs are going to be for everybody. And that's certainly true with workers' comp. I'll give you one reason that workers' comp is starting to increase in costs across the board, like the results of marijuana legalization. in 2020, after the election, 36 states had recreational or had medical marijuana approved, but now 15 have recreational marijuana approved. Well, if somebody's driving down the road and they're high, there was no real, it's not the same as DWI because we haven't caught up to that yet, but this is a very new thing for our public and for our law enforcement and so forth. So being high is causing all sorts of issues at the workplace and so forth, and they're trying to wrestle with that. But this is driving the cost of workers' comp up. And then finally, the new risk, directors and officers. So I insure a lot of nonprofit executives. And that's typically where you found your directors and officers. I'm sure the chamber has some type of directors, officers in place, but simply put, directors and officers insurance helps protect the organization's senior leaders as they're making decisions. And so because of COVID, the D&O policies are being sued because, let's say, an executive said, well, I want you to come into work. And then you come into work and then you get COVID or something else. So there's a rash of lawsuits going on like we've never seen in directors and officers. And I'm just giving you one example of many. But like when a cyber attack happens, oftentimes the directors are sued because, like, if somebody hacked let's say this is a company and somebody hacked in, they're going to sue the directors and officers because we failed to act properly, right? So it's an amazing thing that's going on out there. And then finally, on new risks, I mean, you talk about brand new is the Me Too movement, which is an anti-sexual harassment campaign. It was founded in 2006, but really gained, the media attention in 2017. That movement contributed to a sharp rise in D&O for obvious reasons, right? And then the Black Lives Matter movement, which is the racial justice campaign, that was founded in 2013, but resurged in 2020, in the form of nationwide, rallies, protests, and so forth. That started to really impact the D&O market. So we've got all these new risks that really, or new issues, I shouldn't say risks, that are causing new types of insurance policies and more costs and more policies for a business owner. So to be a business owner, small business owner nowadays, the insurance is obviously a critical part. It always has been, but it's a little different. The hard market, finally, I'll wrap it up, but the hard market's here to stay for a while. The hard market, when you hear that terminology, that just means the costs are going up and it's a lot less competitive. So an agency like mine, we shop for a business owner, but it gets harder and harder to find, competitive pricing for the small business owner. And then finally, the M&A impact on business owners, mergers and acquisitions. There are very few people like me left in Connecticut where I own a small, quote unquote, mom and pop insurance agency. Most of the agencies are selling to very large companies. So the quality isn't there anymore in customer service. Things have changed, and it's hard to get in touch with somebody who actually runs an insurance agency. You're typically calling into customer service at a small business level. So if I had any advice for you, like if you have a really good commercial insurance agent as part of the Greater Valley Chamber, reach out to them. If they own that business, have them shop your insurance for you. There's no reason not to, because you can get some potentially reduced rates, and then you can ask some of the questions that might answer some of your questions that would lead to less claims and so forth. And that's my presentation. I try to keep it as short as sweet and possible, but I'll answer any questions that you might have.